Happy New Year. I'm so excited to be here with you. I must say that this is one of my favorite conferences every year, and really grateful to the Weber River Partnership for putting it on, as well as all of you for showing up and spending your time. Let me figure out this cool button. Maybe? It's just the green one, right? The suspense is killing you, I know. Thank you. Okay, it wasn't just me. Well, while they're working that out, I wanted to start off my presentation talking about why. Why watershed councils? Simon Sinek has famously said in his book, Start With Why, is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So I want to start there. When we look at Utah's water challenges, they have increased dramatically over the last several years, and if we're being honest, over the last decades. Whether it's growth pressures, or climate change, or aging infrastructure, or competing demands and different priorities. We also know that water is hyper-local. And we also know water varies across the state, whether you're in northern Utah or southern Utah. Thank you. Try that. Perfect. And so really watershed councils, the goal was to bring local experts and passionate people together. We also know that diverse groups lead to better outcomes, and then really being able to communicate from the state local level to the statewide level. And so that's what was done. Watershed councils have been created. These are diverse and balanced stakeholder groups. These are independent bodies. They are not state agencies or state councils. They are their own body. They're focused on communication and collaboration. They don't have any regulatory responsibilities, and the Division of Water Resources does support them more administratively. And so there's a ton of potential benefits. One of the things that I really like about these kind of diverse stakeholder groups is collaboration. And has anyone ever heard of the story of the orange? Okay, well then I can't get it wrong. So there's the story of the orange, and it's kind of about growing the pie, right, when you think of collaboration. And in this story, there's a parent, and they're hearing some arguing in the other room, and they go in and they're like, "What are you kids doing?" And the one kid is like, "I want the orange." And the other kid is like, "No, I want the orange." And then the parent, in a little bit of frustration, not that any of you have ever been there if you're a parent, cuts the orange in half, gives half to each of the kids, and says, go do what you want now. You both have a little bit. And later, the parent, maybe wanting to check in, was like, "So how was your half of the orange?" And the one kid said, "Well, I actually didn't really have enough." "And why? What did you want to do with the orange?" the parent says. And the kid's like, "Well, I wanted to make a smoothie, and I didn't have enough juice." And then the parent goes to the other kid and says, "Well, how was your orange?" And they're like, "Well, I didn't really have enough either." And they said, "Well, what were you trying to do with your orange?" He's like, "Well, I was really trying to make some muffins, and I needed more zest." And so the kind of idea is, by working together and understanding each other's interest, we may find out that I really just want the juice and you want the zest. And so we're kind of expanding the pie through collaboration and understanding. And so I think that's one of the really big potential benefits. And I love, the Collaboration Utah style. We have a pretty good track record of collaboration, and this is just additional opportunity. So just overall structure, this is a statewide effort. So there's 11 watershed councils within each of the basin, and then the 12th is a combination of the Great Salt Lake watershed councils, and then there's a larger statewide watershed council called the Utah Watershed Council. Just to give you a little kind of picture of the timeline. So this legislation, the Watershed Council Act, was passed in the spring of 2020. We then hired, the Division of Water Resources was responsible to get this all done. We hired a very great consultant, the Langdon Group, to help us with that effort. By the spring of 2022, and you can kind of read into these, that this is like during COVID, and there was a whole new world of learning as we were going through it, but by the spring of 2022, we had the Utah Watershed Council, so that statewide watershed councils developed and meeting, and then by the summer of 2023, we had some of our first local watershed councils form, and I feel like maybe it felt like it took a while to get those first ones going, but once we got those first ones going, all the rest kind of fell into line, and it's been really great. By the spring of 2024, just last year, we hired Carly Payne. Carly, she's really excited. There's a picture of her up here, but she's our Watershed Council coordinator. If you guys have any specific questions, then she said, well, I'll just direct them back to you. And I said, okay. And then in the summer of 2024, all of the 11 watershed councils are meeting, and the Great Salt Lake Watershed Council is meeting through the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council. Okay, so just to talk a little bit about big picture roles, we have the Utah Watershed Council, so that's the big state water council, is meeting or collaborating with the stakeholders. This is a very diverse group, which I'll get into, but they coordinate, it offers a platform to coordinate between different state agencies, and they help to facilitate the creation of the local watershed councils. And we also, through this council, provide resources to the local watershed councils. We seek guidance, this council seek guidance from the local watershed councils, and they're also a platform to communicate information to the governor and the legislature on water issues. And so it's a great way to get from the local level up to the statewide level information. And once again, here's the very long list of the different members of the Utah Watershed Council. We have state representatives, we have Association of Counties, League of Cities and Towns, Association of Special Service District, industry representatives, agriculture, environment. We have a reclamation project, and that's actually our chair right now, Scott Paxman. And we also, on the State Watershed Council, have about one person from each of the local watershed councils represented. And then there's a couple of non-voting members, myself as the Director of Water Resources and our state engineer. I'm gonna just snag a little water. Okay, and so what have we done? Where are we at? We have all of our functioning local watershed councils have been established. There have been changes to the Watershed Councils Act a couple of times. There's been quarterly reports from the local watershed councils on their activities, and then annual reporting annually to the legislature. And so when we look at the local watershed councils, once again, these are diverse stakeholder groups at the local basin levels, and they encourage and facilitate discussion and collaboration, and they provide guidance to the State Watershed Council. Each basin obviously is unique, so each council is unique, and they're encouraged to find their own mission and what their goals are and kind of set those out. One thing that we are learning is we will grow and learn over time, as these are all brand new, but excited to have those voices meeting together. Once again, diverse local groups, so representatives from agriculture, industry, public water suppliers, tribal nations, planning and researchers, water quality, fish and wildlife, water-dependent habitat environments, watershed management, so a whole list of different people that we're trying to bring together. And really, so the vision is this, regional communication and collaboration. We've kind of covered all of this, but we have this great opportunity. And I really see it as, and this may be a little selfish, but a ready-made stakeholder group to engage with from the state level to the local level. And so, how are things going? We have a number of watershed councils up here. There's been a significant amount of just time spent getting to know each other, going on tours and site visits and learning about the watershed. Staying on top of membership and changes, that has been tricky at sometimes as people kind of move roles and positions, and so keeping on top of that. And Carly has been working closely with the leadership in each council to make sure that those membership changes are tracked and filled and those type of things. And then really beginning to define each council's mission and what their goals are. And then the Utah Lake Council just submitted their first legislative recommendations from a local watershed council, so that was a pretty big step and milestone. So the opportunities, like I mentioned, these are ready-made stakeholder groups in my mind. There are a lot of efforts going on at the state level that engaging with local watershed councils and local experts will be improved. Those processes will be improved by. So one, for example, is the state water plan. Last year, HB House Bill 280 was passed, which kind of revamped the state water plan section and has a whole list of things that we are working on doing, and we envision that these local watershed councils will help us in that process and developing the next plan, as well as the state watershed council. We also have the Great Salt Lake Basin Integrated Plan, which is a significant effort that is ongoing. I could give a whole other presentation about any of these topics, but the Great Salt Lake Basin Integrated Plan is this process in which we are looking at developing a model for the whole Great Salt Lake Basin, and maybe some of you have heard of it. If you haven't, Jake Schlarago is in the back, and he could tell you all about it. But then really just being able to communicate different funding sources that may come available. And this, once again, is a whole other subject, but there is some pretty significant changes that's happening in how the state is going to fund water infrastructure into the future. We had a legislative bill last year as part of HB 280, and there will be another legislative bill this year, and there will be some pretty significant changes. So there's lots of opportunities to engage on that issue as well. And then, like I said, a ready-made stakeholder group. And so at the end of the day, we know that if we're together, nothing is impossible. And I think there's something special about Utah and our willingness to come together on those efforts. So that's all I had. And maybe I moved a little quicker than I had anticipated, but I have plenty of time for questions. Yeah. Please, thanks.
So thank you, Candice. So I'd be interested to see what the Utah Lake Watershed Council has recommended. Is that something that can be shared, especially with the other watershed councils for inspiration even?
Yes, I would imagine that if we're submitting it up, it's a public document, so Carly is probably the best one to get that for you. So do you want to offer some thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. We included it in the State Watershed Council's annual report to the legislature, which is available online. And I did try to send it out to all the watershed councils, but I think you make a great point that being more direct about look what Utah Lake did as an example is a great idea.
Awesome. So thanks, Carly. Perfect.
And I can bring this around if anybody has questions.
Sorry, this is just a small question. Have you heard anything about the license plates in support of Great Salt Lake?
Oh, so I heard that they got enough of them, or we're nearing, very close to getting enough of them. Someone might have better information than I do, but I think it's either pretty close or they completed it. So hopefully soon.
Okay, I haven't gotten mine yet.
Okay, well hopefully you get it soon.
I don't know if this is a stupid question, but I've been kind of involved with going to things vaguely involving occasionally for the Weber River Partnership for an awful lot of years, much longer than what you're saying now for the watershed councils. Could somebody explain the intersection between the Weber River Partnership and the Watershed Council? Because it seems like there must be some commonalities and some synergies between the two entities. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question. So that's perfect because people meeting together at the local level is not new. The Division of Water Quality has for years had different local watershed groups established for TMDLs and other things, as well as, the Weber River Partnership is a prime example. So as we were creating these watershed councils, we tried to meet with all of the different people on how people were already gathering and inviting them to be a part of this process. Some people took us up on it. For example, the Jordan River Commission decided that they would prefer to be the watershed council in that area because they saw some overlap. And I would have to have Weber River Partnership kind of speak to their choices on not wanting to kind of create the two. I think they did see a difference. So there definitely is commonalities in it, but hopefully that there's enough overlap that there's that they're moving in the same direction and not conflicting with each other. But it's a really good question because people meeting together at the local level is not a new thing. This just establishes a framework for each of those councils to get information up to the statewide level. Oh.
Just one more question, Candice.
Yeah. Oh, Darren.
So I was curious with the legislative session starting as you prepare for this session, are you seeing anything on your radar that we should be aware of coming up? I know it sounds like energy is going to be a big focus this time, and hopefully, some of the water issues are not in the bullseye anymore. What are your thoughts on that as you prepare for the session?
Yeah, that's a great question too. Thanks, Darren. So the last couple of years, as far as legislative sessions, have been crazy for water, as you guys probably all are aware and know. This year, Speaker Schultz came out and said there's going to be no more water bills this year. There's not going to be no more water bills. There will be water bills, but hopefully there'll be 10 and not 40 or 45. So generally what I'm seeing, there will be follow-up from HB 280 from last year. So this fall, over the summer, the Division of Water Resources and our sister agencies developed a study called the Existing Funds Study that looks at how we currently fund water infrastructure across the state. And so there will be some of those recommendations will move forward into some legislation. There was also completed a water infrastructure funding study that looked at property taxes. And so that we're anticipating will have some of the recommendations put forward. And that, once again, is a whole other presentation. At the end of the day, we didn't recommend getting rid of property taxes, but there were recommendations on defining what reasonable water rates were and increasing the amount of tiered rates and considering conservation when we're doing those type of things. So those are a couple. I know the state engineer has a number of bills that they're working on. There will also be some changes to the state water policy. There's a few that went through the Legislative Water Development Council, but one of the ones that we worked on specifically is including proactive and comprehensive state water planning as part of our policy. So those are the few that I have on my radar. Okay, thanks you guys.